Welcome everybody to Tales from the Tackle Shop. My name's Andy Page, and as always my co-host is Alex Bates. Evening Alex, how are you?
I'm alright, Andy, I'm alright. I've had a better weekend of fishing and caught a few fish, so I'm a bit happier this weekend.
It was slightly better, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah. I won the match yesterday, so pretty happy with that. From not a good area, but not the best in a good area, so I'll take that, definitely.
So we'll talk about that in depth in a few minutes. Just going to explain to everybody that we have no guests tonight, and that's not because we've run out of friends already. That's we've had quite a lot of people just wanting us to talk about the ways that we fish. So we thought we'd do this one just ourselves tonight, and obviously it helps massively that Alex has had a very successful weekend. He's going to talk about that in a moment, and I've had a bit of fun as well, so that'd be pretty cool. Right, Alex, let's just go back to the match. So what did you have in the end? What was your overall weight?
So I had, my total weight was 17.8, just ahead of Cheesy Bob Fitzjohn, who had his usual 2 tench and a bream and some bits and bobs. So I just sneaked ahead of him. So yeah, I had 17.7 from Little London, which is Benwick, the old Neen at Benwick, which is full of pike this year. So that's good for you pike anglers. I think there's quite a few big perch and zander in there as well. So I've won the match for 17.7. I felt like I fished a tidy match, really. Could have done a few things a bit better, but we've got another match this week coming, which is the 4th round of the Winter League. So I learned a few things as well, which is good.
So this was the practice for this week?
No. This last week was the practice, which I didn't do very well in. Learnt quite a bit, and this week, hopefully, I think I made a few good decisions and bits and bobs, and it paid out. I mean, really, it's a team match. So team-wise, we didn't do amazing, but we didn't do bad. There was quite a few high scores and a few areas you had to avoid, and some areas we avoided and some areas we drew smack in the middle of. So it was a reasonable team performance, 34 points. But really looking forward to Sunday's match, really.
So should we give a summary of that at the end when we do the match results?
Definitely.
Yeah, because we don't want to dive into that just yet.
No.
So this is good stuff. So you won the match. How many anglers in the match?
There's 70 in the match. There's 7 teams of 10.
Right. So it wasn't just a 10-pegger. You beat the
proper
69.
match.
Awesome. Yeah, good stuff. Okay, now this works hand in hand with some of the comments we've had back from listeners this week. I'm just going to read out one of the comments. This is from a guy called Free Solo 82, and he's put on the podcast comment section. Another interesting episode, guys. Enjoyed listening on a coffee break. I shared the podcast on the fishing forum that I participate in to help spread the word, which is what we need everyone to do. Would love to hear Alex's thoughts on how he selects the better stamp of fish in a match that can become a fish race. So that is an excellent question. Did that happen on Sunday? Was it a bit of a fish race?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the matches we fish on the drains are a fish race. You're always sort of looking for a number of fish. Sometimes, say, you're looking for 100 fish, like at March. Normally around 100 fish will go £14, 12 to £14. But Benwick's one of those venues where there's a right mixture of fish. 1 minute you're catching them ½ ounce, then a couple of 3 ounces. And as a question, there's so many different answers to that question. Obviously, it depends on the venue and different conditions and stuff like that. But as a general rule of thumb, there's 2 ways. Either, obviously, the rig you're using. So you've got whatever, you can either go for a heavier rig to try and force your hook bait through the smaller fish to get to the bigger ones, or sometimes you might want to lighten your rig if the bigger fish are competing and they're coming above the smaller fish. So the rig wise, that's the main 2 things, really. Obviously you can change the depth. Sometimes the fish will come higher up, like we said a minute ago, or sometimes they'll be harder on the bottom. So just by moving your rig about, a little change can make the difference between catching 200 fish for 12 to 14 pound or 200 fish for 16 to 18 pound, and that makes a big difference at the end of the day.
Just to butt in, on the day in question? Because for example, at the minute the the water temperatures are still pretty warm for the time of year, I would say.
Yeah.
We're getting there, but we haven't had any sort of major frost. We had a few sort of gentle ones. Would you on the day just try both? Go a bit, put more shot down the line to get through the fish first, or would you come up first, or how would you go about it?
Normally, as a rule of thumb, you start on a positive rig, because when you start the matches, especially on the drains, if there's any fish there, they'll be there at the start, and you have to make the most of the first hour, 2 hours before they wise up and back off due to the pressure. I mean, like on Sunday, I started off on a 0.6 rig, bulk down, which I use a bulk of shot rather than Olivet, just for the simple fact I can do a bit more with it. I can, spread the shot out, or whereas with an Olivet you can't do that as well. So start aggressively. Normally I start at dead depth. Depending on the venues and what I've learnt through the year, sometimes I'll start 2 or 3 inches off. March is a prime example. I start at dead depth. If you're catching small fish, just take 4 inches off, start and fish at 4 inches, and sometimes you find them better stamp fish are there competing above the smaller fish.
So do you think they're intercepting the food as it comes down?
Yeah, I think because there's so many fish, they're all competing, and a lot of the time we're loose feeding. Sometimes when you're feeding ground bait, you're putting a bed of bait on the bottom, so the fish tend to stay near the bottom. But what we're trying to do is bring more and more fish into your peg, because the venues are naturally clear around here. You're sort of feeding more and trying to attract more and more fish and getting them in a real aggressive feeding pattern. Sometimes, you could feed up to 2-3 pints of squats or 2-3 pints of pinkies. So I like to have a selection of rigs to choose from, and so normally there's a rig that outfishes the others, and sometimes it might take you 10-15 minutes, sometimes not till the end of the match until you work out what the best rig is. But you have to keep chopping and changing and moving about and working hard, because if you just fish one hole all day in the same rig, it's only going to work for a so short period of time.
So you might have, I don't know, let's say you might decide to fish 2 or 3 lines during the match, and you might try 2 or 3 different rigs on each line.
Yeah.
Wow, so you've got to have...
There's loads of things like different depths as well. Obviously, the further you go across, normally the shallower the water is. So you'd use, and you probably feed in different baits, so you'd have different bristles. So like fishing squat, you'd have a fibre or a plastic bristle, short stem, especially on the drains, because we suffer a lot of surface skim. Sometimes the drain's going to the left, but the surface skim's going to the right, and just choosing the right float picks up flow or doesn't pick up flow makes big differences, and even bristles. I mean, if you're fishing a bit of hemp or double pinky suspended off the bottom, you need perhaps a hollow bristle, only because you can see it, you can read your bites, and it's more buoyant, so you can fish a bait off the bottom.
Wow, so not only do you need different rigs, but you need different floats depending on what bait you're going to use.
Yeah.
Well, this is coming, and no wonder you've got so many rigs in front of you, because we've made a short video, and you may think that Andy's sounding a bit tired. I've just come back from Scotland, and I've only been back a couple of hours, and we're doing the podcast, and my brain's all over the place. So if I mumble my words, I do apologise. But we made a short video as a teaser, and Alex has got out about 10, 15 winders, but he had a box of... You must have over 100 in there.
Yeah, I don't know how many there's quite a few.
Yeah, that's just one box.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do tonight, Alex is going to describe some of the basic rigs that he would use, probably on the old course, the Neen, where he was at Benwick on Sunday, fishing a canal, any shallow water. I suppose we're up to about 4, 5, 6 foot deep.
Yeah. I've got a range of rigs for different drains. Obviously, the 20 foot you'd use a lot heavier rigs, more aggressive. But we'll talk about sort of squat rigs and through the water rigs, I suppose.
Cool. So these will give people who are fishing locally or even canals and shallow waters a good idea of how to go about doing different rigs. Cool. Okay. Well, before we get into too much of the old maggot drowner type of things, we want to talk about proper fish as well. With teeth.
Roach.
Roach with teeth. Can you imagine
that? Cool.
Yeah, you'd need... How would you... Oh, we won't even
plenty of hook links.
Plenty of hook links, yeah. So, I'm going to be quite open tonight.
That makes a change.
Yeah. I want to actually tell you where I went and what I caught. So I've been to Scotland for the weekend. Went up Friday morning. I left. Took me 8 hours. I was fishing the Pike Anglers Club of Great Britain event on Lake of Menteith. Now, normally I wouldn't tell a soul where we go, what we do, what we catch. The biggest problem is that was twofold. People will follow and try and catch pike that you're after, and secondly, and probably more importantly, you've got to think of the pike welfare. That if a pike gets a treble down his throat, it's a death warrant for it really. And sadly, there are quite a few anglers out there still to this day that fish horrendous rigs and have horrendous bite indication. And yeah, the less guys on your precious waters, the better, really. Anyway, Saturday was Lake of Menteith, and Sunday was at a secret venue, which wasn't very secret because there was people on the bank and all sorts were going on, which we'll talk about later. So anyway, Saturday was okay. It was a lovely event. Shot down there Friday. I met a few friends I know in a pub Friday night, and I was lucky enough to get a 20 out Saturday, so that was happy days. So never fished the lake before. Shot round where we thought the drop-offs were with my side imaging unit, so I managed to find the drop-offs. Found loads of fish. I thought a lot of them were trout, but some of them would have been pike, and we just dropped straight on them. So a bit lucky because never fished it before.
It's easy when you can see where they are, isn't it? Really.
Well, my boat partner fished it a few times, and he wanted to go to where everyone else was going to go, and I said, no, we're not going there because we're just going to be competing for the same fish. So I said to him, where's your second favourite spot? He said, well, over there somewhere, there's some nice drop-off. So that's really, we were targeting where the water dropped down from, say, 12 foot down to 18 foot really quick. And I just wanted to put the boat literally on the top of the drop-off so we could fish on the slope, but also back on the shallows, because that's, with the weather was really warm, I thought there might be a few fish moving there. But as we found the drop-offs, my fish finder was on, and I had on the side imaging, which shows you what's about, which is really good. Yeah. But I also had the auto chart. Now the auto chart is it reads the depth, and it will record the depth and make a chart for me, like a map of the bottom. So I just did a little pass, found where the drop-off started, and then literally backed the boat back up the drop-off, dropped the mud weights, and I did say to my boat partner, we're on a lot of fish here because these are some big trout in here, and I could see one or two shapes near the bottom, which were probably pike. And within 15 minutes, we had one in the boat. So we kind of looked on them a bit, but you use the technology to help you, because on a water like that, you would not know where to start. And on the Sunday, I was fishing a proper glacial lock, which it was 103 foot deep.
103?
Yeah. So obviously, you can discount all that deep water. So I spent quite a lot of time shooting around, again with the auto chart, side imaging, and just working out plateaus and drop-offs.
Will pike live in that depth of water then?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they in this country we're not very good at deep water piking. If you go abroad to Scandinavia, all those places, Holland, they've got it off to a fine art. And yeah, the predators will hug the drop-offs. They'll have certain areas they like to hang around in. They know where the shoalfish is going to come past. They walk up on the shallows, obviously, to spawn, to feed, digest food, because it's warmer. Because this is the thing to get your head round. On these deep waters, the warmer water is near the top, and in the shallows. So, being cold-blooded, they would need to bask in the warmer water to increase the digestive system. So they do move about a lot, and of course they use the thermocline, which changes depending on the summer or the winter. So the skill in this is, if you haven't got a good unit like the Helix Hummingbird that I use, I wouldn't even bother going out, because you have got no idea. I mean, I took a few videos of I was within casting distance of the shore, and I'm not talking about superhuman bait casting casts. I'm talking about I could have hit the shore with my dead bait gear, and it was 60 foot deep. It was incredible, but it helps in a way because you just discount it. I just want to chuck out some dead bait, so you can discount all of this deep water and just fish the plateaus. If I wanted to troll lures, I'd have done it differently. I'd have literally found the drop-offs and gone around with, I don't know, a lure that went down 20, 25 foot and just dragged that around the drop-offs. But to do that, you've got to be really on the ball, and you need to have a chart already made so you can follow these areas. And because these are new waters, I didn't have the time, but it's a bit boring doing that as well. It's kind of, just mundanely pulling a lure about. But no, they're a big challenge, these types of waters, and it takes a lot of skill and knowledge to try and get on the top of it. But I fished this lake on a lock on the Sunday. I managed to get the smallest pike in Scotland out on it. My dead bait was half the length of the pike. I was quite amazed it took it. But I did notice where the road, this happens a lot on pike fishing, where there's a road and people can literally park the car and walk 10 feet to drop their gear off, they will fish. So it just so happened on two parts where the road went near the bank of the loch, or the beach of the loch, I should say. It just coincided, that was a shallow area, so there were people bank fishing, and I was talking to the guy that basically runs the water, and he said he found a guy with a 125 centimetre pike in the summer, and it weighed 7 pounds. And I said, that must have been like a snake, because it should have gone 25 plus easily. And he said it was just full of traces. And this is the problem with waters like this. People will night fish it. Excuse me. People will just not use the correct bite indication, and pike will get deep hooks. So, yeah, so it'd be a good reason to talk about rigs for pike as well. I think I'm going to touch on up traces tonight, which is a bit of a sensitive subject for some people. But I've got a couple of up tracers that I use that I make out of titanium and fluorocarbon. But we'll talk about those a bit later on. Alex, did you want to start describing a couple of the rigs that you would have used at the weekend without giving away too much?
Right, so with Benwick, it's one of them venues at the minute. It's clear, it's weedy, the fish are on the move as well. They're not sure whether they're coming into town or staying where they are. So the best way to approach it is sort of a couple of areas in your peg with some bases, and then either loose feeding or to carry on cupping in ground bait. So for those lines, I use different rigs to do different jobs. Normally, as a rule of thumb, my go-to rig at Benwick would be sort of a 0.4 or a 0.6. Normally, fish it quite positively, so a bulk.
Okay, so let's go back old school.
Right.
0.4, 0.6. You're talking about the thickness of the line here, aren't you?
No, that's the weight of the rig. So
right.
0.4 or 0.6 of a gram, or 4 14 or 4 16.
Hold on a minute. That's like nothing.
Yeah. Well, you're
Yeah.
used to like 2 ounce leads and things like that. And
28 grams in an
size
ounce. So
4
you've just
hooks.
gone how many grams?
So 0.4.
0.4 of a gram.
0.4 of a gram. Yeah.
What
That's-
size shot are you using for that?
So normally on a 0.4, I'll probably have a bulk of probably 6 number 9s.
Have you got some boxes over there?
Yeah.
Right, pass
Yeah.
them those. Because
Yeah.
I used
So
to
there's
use number
some nines.
9s as my last shot.
That's your smallest shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we used to match fish
Yeah.
300
I
years
think
ago.
As probably 8s, 10s, and 9s. 9s don't get used as much as probably 8s and 10s. Most people would use an 8 for bulking.
So you're using your bulk using 8s or 9s?
Yeah. I like to use a bulk on these drains because of the flow. It picks up the pace of the natural pace of the rivers.
Is this heavy enough?
Yeah, yeah. Surprising how fast it will go down.
If you can hear this, because Alex is passing me the bulk shot boxes. Yeah, we used to use 9 as the telltale shot, just on your hook link.
Drop a shot.
Yeah, just so you got a bit of positive indication all those years ago, and that's what you're using for your bulk 3 together.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so 103 years ago, we may have pinched them all with our fingers because they were proper old lead. But when they brought the new stuff out, you had to use your teeth, which obviously was no good for your line at all. So these days, how do you actually get these on?
So obviously people still put them on conventional way, but over the last 2 or 3 years, I've been using shot pliers. I mean, people say, it's a bit of a gimmick, and but by putting them on with pliers, you get a nice even compression onto the shot. The shots slide up and down perfectly. I mean, I use Balabini shot because the cut is, the central cut is fantastic. Even like on an 8, you could get 0.20 or 0.22 if you were cut commercial fishing. You can get quite a thick line through the cut of the shot. That's the good thing about using these pliers. You can pinch them on hard, or if you just squeeze it the opposite way, you can slide them up and down your line and it don't damage your line. That's the key thing, I feel, with using pliers with shot. Can you see that, Andy?
Yeah. I've just got this shot out of the box. Oh, I'm getting old. 5 years ago, I could have done this properly, but I can't even see the.
Have a look at them ones. They're 13s.
Oh, no chance. But I've got Alex's pliers in my hands, and I'm just playing with the number 8, and I'm getting fat-fingered as well. What is going on?
The key thing as well is to keep a tight line when you're putting the shot on your line. It's so much easier. If you've got your rig on your top kit, just put the hook to the bottom of the top kit so it's tight, and then just pull the line, put the shot onto the line so you're tensioned, and then just pinch your pliers on it.
You don't want to be doing any of this on the bank, do you?
Not really, no. Especially when you've got six to eight top kits to do on the bank. That's why you see all these rigs I've got. You've got to be organised, especially at the high standard that the local interleague fishes to. That just little things like that can make a big difference.
Well, I tell you what, I'm quite good at tying pipe flies, and I'm quite articulate, but without my glasses on, I can't even see the slit in those. The 13s. How do you get? I can see why you use pliers.
13s aren't really used that much, but they're brilliant shots for just getting your float just right. So you might get your bulk of say 6 or 8 number 9s and a couple of droppers, but you just want it just to set that bristle dead right. I mean, a lot of people do use bristle grease, and I have a lot of people come in the shop and say, "Oh, have you got bristle grease?" And I say, "Yeah, blah blah blah." But the only problem with bristle grease is if you move your float up and down the line, you're putting that grease on your line.
Hold on a minute. So bristle grease, is that to get rid of the surface film?
No. So bristle grease or muslin or something like that, Vaseline is probably the best thing to use. Basically, if you just overshot your float slightly, people just dip the bristle into the Vaseline.
Oh, I've got you.
So it just sits with the surface skim. I used to be a massive fan of it. But the problem is when you went to move your float or your tiny bit of Vaseline on your hands would get on the line, and then it makes the line float, which on the drains I use a lot of back shot, and you need that to get under the surface skim. So I'm not a fan of Vaseline. I'd rather use 13s and get it absolutely precise than overshot it and use a bit of bristle grease or Vaseline to bring it back up again.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Do you think it's that critical?
Oh, it makes a massive difference.
Are the bites that tentative?
Oh, it's hard to explain. When we do this fishing every week, little things like that are just what you do naturally. You don't think. But, I mean, when you've got a float like that, you're looking for any little lifts. You can read your float. You need to be organised. You really do. But going back to the rigs I start on, I always start on a more aggressive rig. Yesterday I started on a Drennan SF2, which is a brilliant float. I'll just pass it over to you now, Andy. They're this new flexi wire. So it's a mix of carbon and metal stem. So you've got the best of both, really. It's more stable in the wind, but doesn't bend like normal wire. I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, that's a 0.4. So that rig I started on, caught a few fish on that. Realised there was a few fish in my peg.
Hold on a minute, that's the aggressive rig.
Yeah, so that's a more positive rig. Yeah.
Well, those floats are like. What length of pole would you be using to fish that?
So at Benwick, you're normally looking for the deepest part of your peg, which is normally top kit plus 3, top kit plus 4. Basically anywhere where you can find a clear patch.
6 metres?
Yes, probably about 7 or 8 metres, right, I would have said. Yeah.
So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take a quick photo. Oh, crikey! I'm just going to take a quick photograph of all this. So, what floats were these called again?
So they're the Drennan SF2s. So they're interchangeable bristles. I mean, I've cut the bristles down on them just slightly because I like shorter bristles on my floats. They retail about 220, 225. We've got plenty of them in the shop. They really are a nice float. You can use them for a bit of everything. You can use them for squat, pinky, all sorts really. Some days you can leave a bit of bristle showing, and then you can dot them right down as well.
Like that's your positive rig.
Yeah, I've got one slightly heavier, 0.6 or a 0.8, but normally that's what I would sort of settle on as a rule of thumb.
Yeah. Just so for the listeners, what I'll do, I'll post, as we're talking through the different shots, I'll post them on Facebook in order, a bit like we did with Andy's floats last week, so people can see what we're talking about as they go through the podcast, because they can listen to the podcast and look at the pictures at the same time. Now you've got 2 floats on the same winder here.
So they're sort of identical. So if you do have a wrap over or tangle or something like that, I can just quickly go to my box, unwind it, and you fish in again. Set it to the depth, because I've got Tip-X on my pole with the depth, and just slide the float up to that, new hook length on, and away you go.
So I mean, you haven't got them here, but your hook links. Do you make every hook link exactly the same length?
Yeah. So I've got a range of different hooks.
Hold on a minute, my phone's ringing. Can you hear it? It's the electrician. He's a bit late. We'll have to ignore him. Sorry, mate. I got hook links.
Yeah. So I've loads and loads of hook links tied, different gauges of hook, different shapes, different diameters of line. Obviously, if you were trying to target a tench, you'd use like a bigger hook, sort of, and a bigger line, a bit more your style, but still tiny compared to you. Sort of, I tend to go for a size 15 or a 13 if I'm fishing a big lobworm, to sort of an 014.
Why? Because hooks always used to be even.
Yeah.
So you've just mentioned.
No, that's just a particular pattern. That's a Kamazan B711.
Right.
They're just different sizes. I found the gauge of the wire on them is perfect for chopworm fishing. They've got quite a decent barb on them as well, and normally you're fishing a slightly heavier rig, which is something like that with a thicker bristle.
So that's more like it.
Yeah,
I can see that.
So you've got a strong elastic, you're sort of hooking themselves.
You've got your Olivet there as well.
On the pole tip. Yeah, Olivet on that one, more aggressive.
Is that just a straight inline Olivet?
Yeah, inline Olivet, couple of shot either side to lock it in place, and a couple of 8 droppers.
See, that's what I would call a positive rig.
Yeah, that's a chopworm rig.
Right, yeah.
That's a choppy rig.
Yeah, we'll take a quick picture of that. So that's what I'm used to. In the old days, 103 years ago, when we used to match fish, they're the sort of things we'd use. So they're still about.
Yeah.
So yeah. Would you use that at the weekend? Did you give?
Yeah. So I had one of them set up in a gram. Normally I fish that line down my peg in the deepest water, and again in a nice weed-free area if possible. And normally I'll cup in chopworms and casters, or bait dropper in worms and casters, depending on what the river's doing. If it's got a bit of pace on it, I'll bait dropper it, but normally I like to feed it in a cup.
Well, I mean, casters and worm have to be one that, well, they're both awesome baits, aren't they? Yeah. What is it about casters that big fish like?
I don't know. I just think I think the biggest thing is on the drains is they just sit there and they don't move. I think over the last sort of 5-6 years, dead maggots have sort of taken their place almost. No one thought of using a dead maggot, but now, especially commercial fishing and even for natural bream fishing and stuff, dead maggots are.
Isn't that bizarre? We've been using dead maggots for years because they don't crawl off into the silt.
Yeah.
So it's just like whenever we used to go tench fishing at Sywell, we just take a load of dead maggots with us because it was just so much easier.
Yeah.
And
yeah. So I'll go back to the rigs I started on, because with it being bulk or shot, I can do bits and bobs with them. I can either bulk it right down.
Yeah.
So I have a 5-inch hook length with all my shot above that.
So it's because I asked you the question: is every hook length for your finer tactics 5 inches?
Yeah, I tend to use 5. If I was river fishing, I'd probably use a 6 or a 7-inch hook length. The reason people might say, "What's the difference of an inch to on a hook length?" Well, when you're fishing on venues with lots of fish, you need your last shot quite close to your hook, and that shows you indication then. Any hold ups, it's so more positive with a 5-inch hook length. And then from a chop worm rig, like I was talking earlier, I'll use a 7-inch hook length because you've got more line laying on the bottom. You don't want to see too much. When the float goes under, you want to be striking and knowing that it's in the mouth. You don't want to be sat there priming the line for a big tench and the float goes under and you strike and it comes off because you haven't hooked it properly. So that's why I use a longer hook length. But the bigger the fish, the longer the hook length normally. Okay,
cool. So that it's
very, very technical. Very technical.
We used to just do it on the bank years ago.
Yeah.
We used to use the little black handled hook tie.
Matchman hook tie. Yeah, people still use them.
Yeah. What do you use?
I I've all mine to hook links. So I use an old style Periotti hook tire, which is like a handheld machine, so you get all your hook links exactly the same length. A lot of people do still use the Matchman and use a Census or Samo loop sizer and get them exactly right, but I found the Periotti ones fantastic. I think there's the Gizmo ones, and I think Stomfo do a fantastic one as well. There's so many different ones out there. I think you just got to find one that works for yourself. And
what do you stock in the shop?
Well, obviously the hand ones, we've got the Matchman. There's even a hair rig Maver one as well. Stomfo have done 2 new ones, so sort of, and Drennan do a hook tire as well, which all do the same sort of thing. I tend to keep the Periotti ones in. They're about 30 quid, and the Stomfo ones as well. They're a little bit more money. They're around 50 quid.
We're going to do a walk through the shop at some point in the future. But you have to show me these because I'm quite intrigued actually how you use them. Because excuse me, what we used to do was you'd get your £4 or £3 reel line, get your waggler on, and this is while you're on the bank. Get your bulk around the base of the waggler. You know roughly how deep you're fishing, and then you perhaps use number 1s, number 3s as the bulk down the line round your loop. You probably have a about 2 foot hook link. You'd loop to loop it, get the whole thing tight, and then the bottom end near the reel, you'd be tied on your size 16, size 18. Shaking your head.
It's mad. I mean, there's still a lot of anglers that do that, and there's nothing against that. That's a good thing about fishing, isn't it? You can take out of it what you want. You can be really anal and be sad like I am, or you can, like I say, get your BBs and fish it how you want with rubbers on. You do what you want. It's your own.
It's the
enjoyment.
Beautiful thing about fishing. You can do it your own way. But I will say one thing that I've learned about all facets of the sport is the more prepared you are, you will succeed more.
Yeah.
And the harder you try, the luckier you get.
Yeah.
And if you've got, oh dear, I've got frog in my throat. If you get those little things right all the time, it's amazing how when luck is on your side and that bigger fish comes along, you land it.
Yeah.
If you get something slightly wrong, you get it wrong a lot. It's just disaster waiting to happen. So, yeah, I think the anal bit is good for if you want longevity in the sport. You want to be good at it. You've got to apply yourself, haven't you?
And it's always changing as well. You know, like even one year to the next, when we fish Benwick, one year it's slightly different from the other, and different areas of the drain respond differently to different tactics. You can be 7 pegs away, and what you did the week before is completely wrong for 7 pegs away. You know, this week certain their sections fished different. Some sections had more fish in than the week before, some had less. So you need to be covered for all these eventualities.
Well, you're right, and I'll say, I mean, I'm going to say this now. I phoned you Friday as I was driving up to Scotland, didn't I?
Yeah.
And I said, "Are you ready for the weekend?" I said, "Are you ready?"
Yeah.
And I said, "How you been doing these Winter League matches?" And you said, "I'm in second place. I've had a first in my section and a second in my section, and you get points, I think, for your section wins." And I'm not saying it because you sat here, but your consistency is incredible. So you are. Okay, you won on Sunday, but it's all about winning your section, isn't it?
Yeah, for the team. Yeah, that's the main thing.
Your consistency in these matches is quite incredible. I know you whinge about your draws on the March Open, but that will change soon as well because we'll rig the draw. I mean, we'll
come on, cheesy,
come on, cheesy Bob. But the reason you're one of the reasons, you're a very talented angler, but one of the reasons is you put all the preparation in beforehand.
Yeah, obviously preparation is massive, and as a team, you all need to be prepared. You all need to have the right rigs because before the draw, you don't know what section you're going to be in. So all week, I know the lads in my team are going to put 110% in as much as they can, make sure they've got the right rigs. We've had conversations and Facebook chats, what we think, and that's the beauty about team fishing is even though you might draw a crap area, you've still got a fish for the team. So you feel like you might have come third in your section from a real poor peg, but you feel like you've achieved something. So you've got to be prepared because you don't want to let your team down. That's the be-all and end-all, really.
Well, it is, and I remember I hadn't fished team matches for a long, long time, but I started fishing lure matches this year, which is crazy. This is the craziest thing I've ever done in my life because you're fishing in boats on big waters with your teammate, and you've got to have a plan of attack, a bit like you guys do.
Yeah.
But sometimes on these competitions you can't practice. You have to use your finders, and that takes it to a whole different world. And because we're pike in the background in our heads, we're trying to find places out of the way where people don't go. And you can very badly get it wrong. I won't go into detail now, but we fished the World Predator Classic. A friend of mine called Eric Edwards, who's a very famous pike angler. And I was really big-headed. I thought we were going to smash everybody. We did appallingly badly. But it's only because we went to the wrong spots.
Yeah.
We had the right tactics before the first practice day. Because I spent weeks on there practicing. My poor partner, I kept dragging her with us, and I was finding bait fish. I was on the fly, trying to catch predators, and I was doing really well in some places, not others. And we had a really good game plan, a bit like you guys would have done at the weekends. And then the day before, we went out with the sonars, and we found what we thought were a massive stack of zander in a secret location. They ended up being bream. So we basically lost everything in the first few hours of the first day.
To get the right target species, isn't it?
Yeah, but these fish finders are good, but they don't tell you which species they are. So it's only when you get really, really good and you get really, really expensive ones you can zoom in on the fish tails and things. But sadly, that one wasn't. But it's the same thing. It, no matter what team sport you're in, you've got to get your tactics right, haven't you? And you have to have everybody on the same page. So this is good. Okay. Which rig are you going to make on video?
I don't know if we're going to make one on video, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through what rigs I use for certain scenarios.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll probably talk about, obviously, squat rigs.
Yeah.
So I've got 2 or 3 different ones for that. Bread punch rigs, obviously with March is a big thing, the bread. Not so much lately, but you never know, it might change again. Chop worm rigs, and obviously deeper, more aggressive rigs for like the 20-foot, the deeper drains.
Okay, so we'll finish this podcast off, then we'll do some video on those rigs.
Yeah.
So people really want to see what Alex is doing. We will put that on the link after we've published the podcast. Will come out Wednesday morning. We'll probably put that link up probably Thursday, Friday, just to keep things fresh for people. Awesome. Now, why is Bloodworm and Joker banned?
I don't know, to be honest. I think years ago it was all about cost. I mean, nowadays, sort of a match pack of Bloodworm and Joker is only about 12, 15 quid. People always used to think that you'd have to have loads to feed and stuff like that, but your Bloodworm is your hook bait, normally. I mean, you can fish Jokers on the hook, especially for roach. You do get some better stamp fish on the smallest Joker. And people always had this impression that once fish fed on Bloodworm and Joker, they didn't want to eat anything else. So it sort of hindered the general pleasure anglers fishing the match length. They won't catch anything because of Bloodworm and Joker. And I don't think there's a lot in it. I just think it's just not really cottoned on in the UK, and it's not that easy to get hold of.
Well, you see, because I'm gonna appeal for the guys that know Alex, who know me, who are my age or older. There was a guy called Del Marsh, and he took me down the old course of Nîmes when I was 14, 15, so this was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And he had Bloodworm and Joker for us.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you where we fished. Would you call it... No, hold on.
It would have been... Yeah.
It would have been Wigstone's Bridge,
yeah,
going back out, but on the other bank.
Yeah, they used to fish that. It was all full of brambles, wasn't it?
Yeah, what was it? What's that called?
So that is what now is known as the BMX track or Wigstone's Bridge.
But facing it, yeah. So we're going out towards the railway track.
Yeah,
railway
towards
line.
the coal yard then.
That's right, yeah. And Dale said, he introduced me to Bloodworm and Joker, and we were straight into 3 or 4 ounce roach. Yeah. It was brilliant. Now, I've got another friend called Guy Eldridge, who used to be a match angler, who was a pike fly angler.
Right.
Now, he remembers fishing against Polly.
Yeah.
I spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, and he's going to come on and do one of our guests, but with a pike fly fishing in mind.
Yeah.
And he was the Bloodworm and Joker gatherer for his team.
Oh, right.
So he was the guy that would go out with the chest waders and scraping the
risking his life.
Risking his life, yeah. But that was one of his roles in the team, was to do that. So obviously teams have been well organised for 20, 30 odd years, not giving guys age away, but he is older than me. And he would go out, he would get the Bloodworm Joker for the team, make sure it was packed, prepared, cleaned, whatever. I don't know what preparation you guys do with
Bubble it up. Yeah.
But it has been around for an awful long time. But
it's as natural as it comes, isn't it, really, Bloodworm?
Yeah, so, but just not...
It's just not taken off at all. and I don't think you need it. You don't need bloodworm, especially around here. The fishing's fantastic without it, so you definitely don't need it.
No, it's just I don't like to see things banned because
No.
once you ban one thing, where does it stop?
Yeah.
And if a team's got the get up and go to actually get this stuff, then you should be rewarded, shouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, right. So we've kind of waffled. It's my fault. Totally my fault. I've got Scottish jet lag, I'm afraid. So you've showed me your positive rig.
Yeah.
We went to the
Chopworm rig.
Chopworm rig.
Yeah.
Now, if, say, for example, you know roughly what line the fish will be on, so you said you're going to target the deepest part of the drain first.
Yeah.
Your positive rig hasn't worked. I take it your chopped worm rig is something you go to later on in the match?
Yeah, normally as a rule of thumb, big fish tend to feed quite early, the same as your target fish really, your main weight builders. 20, 25 minutes, I have a quick look. If I feel like I've got time to have a look, if I'm in an out fish race, I shan't go on it unless I have to. I just get my head down and concentrate on putting numbers of fish in my net. I don't know, maybe you feel like I'm behind and I need a bit of a snooker. I have a quick 5-minute look, no more than that, because if there's a big fish in your peg, you're going to catch it pretty straight away. So I normally start on a big hook bait. I mean, for tench, normally they're the main fish you're going to catch this time of year. There's an odd bream still kicking about because it has been quite warm, but I'll fish a full dendra just nipped in half, tip with a single pinky. I don't know, I just have a lot of confidence with that for catching tench, and I'll just lower it in, hold it about 6-8 inches off the deck. So basically showing them the bait, especially if there's any big perch about, they'll nail that. Then just drop the rig into the water and then just lift it and drop it again. So I'm sort of like making a jig effect. So your bulk sort of coming up, down, and then the bait naturally falls down. I'll hold it as still as you can. I mean, using a bump bar or pole support is quite critical when you're worm fishing, because you can hold it dead still, you can nail it to the bottom. And I'll probably give it a minute before I'll lift it and work your bait again. Sometimes dragging it left to right. It depends on the weed as well and how big a hole and what sort of bottom you got. If you've got a nice clean bottom, you can really drag it and entice a few bites. But I'll have a quick look. If I ain't had no indications after 5 minutes, I'll just come in, put it back up. Normally I won't refeed it because the chances are that nothing's come over it yet. But if I know there's lots of small perch and stuff like that, I'll tend to top up and then come off that line, looking to maybe catch one a bit later. I mean, with tench as well, normally the last hour can be a good time to target them. Obviously with daylight hours dropping, but if someone down the drain has hooked one, chances are there's a few feeding. So if the word on the bank is that someone's caught one, or if one of our lads have had a tench or whatever, you know, the word is get on your worm and have a quick look, because they might have a 10-minute window where they all have a feed during the day.
Do you know what? This is quite amazing. That when you're talking about this doesn't matter what type of fishing you're doing. It has the same philosophy.
Yeah.
So you're talking about windows. So predators, they switch on and off.
Mm-hmm.
Without, it could be light values. It could be whether you believe in the moon phases or not.
Yeah.
Something switches them on and off, and it can be for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a big reservoir in the southwest of the country. We fly fish a bit, and it has a 15-minute window. Literally, if you're not on them in that 15 minutes,
yeah,
you're not going to catch. And the pike are massive, so that is critical. So, and also you're talking about jigging your worm.
Yeah.
So you're not just lowering it down the deck and leaving it there. You're doing something on a bait that's crawling and wriggling to actually
basically a sort of drop shot into almost effect.
It is, yeah. That's enough. I actually thought that's amazing. You guys are, and I think that's probably what steps up. Your average match angler is just going to swing it out and leave it.
Yeah, put it down the hole and leave it.
Yeah.
But you know, the other thing as well is use lighter rigs over the top. Some days they're hard to catch. There's big fish in your peg, but they won't have a big bait. You know, you catch more tench these days on double pinky on a squat rig, and you know, playing it around on a freeze elastic and just sneaking it in, and probably 50-50 chance of getting them in. But there's different rigs do different things in your swim, and picking the right one is critical at the end of the day.
And it is. It doesn't matter if you're predator fishing, match fishing. It's got very similar tones to it. Oh, it's incredible, really.
Yeah.
See, I didn't realise you guys did that with the worm rig. I just thought you were just sort of, because if I'm perch fishing,
Yeah.
and I use a worm. I mean, okay, I'll give you an example. I drop shotted a couple of years ago in an area where it was pretty full of fish, and using the old little plastic jigs was boring. I just whacked a worm on, just dropped it out there, and I had a 10-pound zander straight away. Just took it because the worm was doing the work for me.
you.
Yeah, but it just shows if you work. And it wasn't in a match. I think it was just a bit of pleasure fishing. I was just messing about. But if you just apply yourself, it's amazing how you can just attract it. You want that one bonus fish to make all the difference.
Yeah.
And what did you call it? Snooker.
A snooker, yeah. So it's like a 3-pounder is quite a lot of silverfish. So I don't know. Say you're behind and you need to get back up to speed. It's like someone giving you a 3-pound bonus, isn't it? You need them sometimes.
Not a kicker.
No,
They call it kicker in them.
oh, do they?
Yeah, that's a snooker.
Yeah.
Perfect. No, that's great. And have you had an example recently where you've had to use that tactic to catch up?
I haven't really had any bonus fish this year. I don't know. The bigger fish haven't fed like they normally do.
Is it because you're in the zone with the smaller fish and
A lot of the time, it's when you're team fishing, you're sort of trying to be ahead of the game on the small fish.
Yeah.
And you're in tune with your match, what the fish are doing, where they're backing off to. So you're always trying to put the next fish in your net. But there's some venues. I mean, Benwick is a prime example. When them big fish switch on, you've got to be on them. You know, one week it might be eel fishing, but with the moon at the minute, like you're saying about moon phases, and the clear water is weedy, they haven't been showing. And then another year, you know, you might need 7-8 eels in your bag because...
Well, we know a man.
We know a man.
We know a man.
He is a Fenland creature.
I wondered if you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to use that?
He knows he's a Fenland creature.
We know a man. We will get him on.
Yeah, we've got to get him on.
We've got to get him on.
Special guest, I think. It'd be lovely to hear from him.
He'll come on. Yeah.
Yeah, the eel man.
Yeah. Just don't get.
Yeah.
If you sit too close to him, might catch something. He bites me.
Bless him.
Right, and the other thing that when you were quite expressive when you were telling me about how you were fishing the worm, and you said about my side imaging unit, you said it's all right if you can see him, but I'm looking at the contours, and you were describing to me the contours of the drain, and you were I could tell by the way you were talking, you were actually fishing areas of the drain where you knew there was a little shelf drop off, where it's deepest, or where it was just coming up on, and it's the same thing. Yeah,
exactly the same. Looking for shelves, bottom of the shelves. You might even have some reeds on your near side, so you've got a bit of shade, you know. There's all sorts of things to look for. I mean, even you might be fishing at, especially Benwick, it's sort of open, there's not really many trees, and you could have a bright day, and then all of a sudden cloud cover comes over, and your fish stamp change slightly, and you might think, right, a chance of a bonus fish here, and you drop on it last 5 minutes when it's getting dark and gloomy, and there's a tench waiting there for you. You know.
Yeah, it's just this is what sets the better anglers apart.
Yeah, it's watercraft.
You
can't tell someone about it. No. You've got to learn it yourself.
Yeah,
you know, people come in the shop and say, "So what would you do today on the fishery?" And I say, "Well, it's maggot short, blah 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 blah." But you can't physically fish their peg for them.
No,
you know, how many maggots do I need? Brilliant question. In the summer, you want plenty with you because you've got to feed loads. In the winter, you don't want as many. But then, the amount of people have said, "Oh, I wish I'd had another pint of maggots. I could have done with them today." So it's one of them questions you're never ever going to know, but you just got to take what you feel will be a rough judgment to your peg.
Exactly. I mean, I'll give you an analogy for Saturday. I put a bait on the drop-off, and I knew, because obviously I just reversed the boat back up it, but I put my second rod, and it wasn't my second rod, my other bait, on the 12-foot plateau behind me, because I knew it's going to be quite a sunny day. The fish will probably move on the plateau as well, and guess both big. I had another nice fish as well, which wasn't quite 20, came off the plateau. The guy who was in my boat with me, we were right on him, wanted to put both baits on the shelf.
Yeah,
and I just thought, no, they're going to move up. There's going to be fish going along the plateau because that's what predators do. And you're right, it's not wishing to sound big-headed. It's you can't teach people this. You kind of pick up cues through experience.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Definitely. There's one thing I was going to say to you though, because your finesse and your rigs is brilliant. But what we will do is, I think we should pick a fen drain, beginning of June, pre-bait 2 areas.
Yep.
I'll swing tip it.
Yeah.
Old school. You pole fish it.
And I'll smash it to pieces on the pole.
You've got no chance.
Easily.
I am a legend at the swing tip.
I've seen this swing tip, and yeah.
Catch that many bream, I don't use a keep net.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I reckon I had a bet with this guy on Saturday. I had
Yeah.
10 casts with my plastic. I said, I'm going to get one on this lure. I said, he's been chucking a lure all day. He owed me a tenner for the boat. And I said,
Right.
not double quits. No. I was
You
confident, even up to the 8th cast.
Yeah.
But I left it
That's
to
another thing. Confidence in fishing is massive.
Yeah, it is. But I will beat you on the swing tip, and you can have the pole. How are we
It's
going?
fine.
How are we going to do this? Weight? We can't do numbers.
There's got to be weight in it.
Use a keep. Okay.
Yeah.
So listeners, just listen. This is
no
going to
other
be
way, is there?
the Fen challenge. Yeah.
Definitely.
I will put in more pre-bait than you.
Don't matter.
I'll go down my boat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, that's for a lot later on. Right, okay. So, Bennick, you went the positive approach. You might have a trot worm. Did you have to go ultra finesse at all?
Yep. Like I was saying, we have plenty of rigs to cover all eventualities. So I had obviously 2 or 3 positive dropper rigs. Then I had a couple of rigs for fishing across. So you're looking for about 2.5 foot water. And again, a nice weedy free area if you can find it.
So fishing that shallow, are you looking to pick 3 or 4 fish out and they're going to spook off?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question because Bennick's been really spooky this year. So you've had to sort of make the most of your spells when the fish are in your peg. So maybe sometimes a more aggressive rig is better when there's a few fish about. And picking the right stamp out as well. I mean, you could catch 10 fish and the bloke next to you catch 10 fish, but they've got to be the right stamp. So for my squat fishing, I tend to fish normally a Colmic Senna. So they're a short plastic bristle. They're like a teardrop shape with quite a fine wire. They just fish really nice on the drains. I have 3 or 4 silicone rubbers on there. I haven't got any shot on those rigs because I don't like to put too much shot on them because I don't like them oxidising on my winders. But normally I'll fish a strung out rig. Normally I'll have a little bulk, sort of half.
Well, okay, stop there.
Strung
out rig. What does that mean?
Well, years ago they'd call sort of a shirt button rig.
Oh, so, yeah.
Well, this is just the same, but the shot's just evenly spaced through your rig. I normally have a bulk of 10s or 11s, and then I have 12s or 13 droppers, nice evenly spaced out. Again, little back shot and a little bit longer line, just so I can flick the rig about. You can flick it past your bait, sort of your base, flick it short.
So you're going to fish this in shallow water.
Yeah.
You're going to try and pick up a few fish as they're there.
Yeah,
You
naturally the fish will back across the drain.
Yeah. So you're going to, as you catch, I don't know, what, 2, 3, 4 ounce.
I would say an average stamp, 1.5 ounces.
Right. Okay. You're going to catch 3 or 4, probably spook a few off.
Yeah.
And then you're going to leave that line alone.
Yeah.
And then you're going to come back to it.
Yeah.
Leave
I
it
mean,
alone.
normally I don't want to really be fishing that line until the last 2 hours of the match.
Okay.
I try and make my middle lines tick over and keep putting few fish in my net for as long as possible. Just for the simple fact, if you go over too early, you risk pushing them out of your peg and you sat there last half hour with nothing.
With
on your
nothing.
peg.
Yeah, I got you. Because you've got nothing to go to.
Just a bit of swim management, really.
Well, again, that I suppose on the day you won't know what you're doing until things materialise.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
That's why you need the range of rigs to cover all eventualities.
So going to Sunday, did you were catching quite consistently on the positive rig?
So I caught really well for probably 2.5, 3 hours down the middle, just loose feeding a few squats, varying my depth, flicking between 2 or 3 different
Were you
rigs.
pinky hook link?
Pinky hook bait was massive, yeah. Fished a 20 fine wire hook, so you won't be able to see them. 07 hook clinks.
Well, okay, 07. What's that in old school?
07 is probably about £1.
Yeah.
So really light. I mean, diameter-wise, you used to be the old Bayer Purlon, so it's like half the.
That's
diameter.
the one. Yeah.
The high-tech line now is fantastic. I use Colmic Stream for hook lengths. It's a sort of a hybrid-y.
Maxima was the hook.
Maxima is still the number one for real line, but for pole line, the lines are a lot more high-tech. But there is a time and a place for Maxima, and I think there's a particular rig that I use on a whip that I think we'll do a later podcast, a bit later, and that uses Maxima still. Because Maxima's a bit of a dinosaur line, but it's still one of the best running line.
Yeah, that was the real line we
Yeah,
used to use.
it's still hard to beat. It's stiff.
£3, £4 Maxima. Yeah.
Yeah.
In brown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sort of an 07 hook length, small fine wire hook, single pinky, double squat, sometimes double pinky if you're on a few fish.
Double pinky.
Yeah, double pinky. Go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah, let them have it. And obviously big maggot. I mean, we don't tend to fish maggot on the hook that much anymore. I mean, everyone has them on their side tray, but there's probably more dead maggots fed than there is live maggots. Sometimes if you got...
Why is that then?
I just think these fish I don't think they're used to... Well, they must be by the end of the winter. Probably when March comes, they're probably sick to death of pinkies and squats as their natural diet. But I don't know, the fish just prefer them. They just respond to them. I think maybe because you can feed more bait to the number of fish, maybe.
Yeah,
It's probably why squats are
do
better.
they get fill up? Would a normal sized maggot with the size fish you're talking about, they're going to get full up, aren't they?
Maybe, possibly.
I don't know.
Possibly. I don't know. I mean, bigger the fish, you do tend to use maggots, but I mean, even on like the 20th and that, it's because you loose feeding, maggots are all right if you're perhaps on a few rudd, maybe on certain venues, dinking a few over to a tree or a boat or something. But most of the time, you're building your peg, so you want lots of baits falling through the water consistently.
You can't take out what you put in, can you? So
No.
you're best to build it
No.
up rather than overload it.
Yeah, it is strange. It'd be interesting to see if everyone took 2 pints of maggots and just loose fed maggots
Maggots and caster and shot worm.
and
Wait
see
for
what
it.
would happen. It would be an interesting match. It
They
would.
wouldn't perhaps do very well for the team, but they might win it by a mile.
Well,
You don't know, do you?
you don't know.
You don't know. Right, so let's go back to Sunday. Your positive rig down the middle was working well for
Yeah,
you.
so it's working well.
Did you have to vary anything?
Yeah, so I switched to like a 414, similar rig to what I use across. Switched to that, nicked a few more. All the time you're feeling your peg's dying, so you're perhaps cutting back on the feed, topping a bit of ground bait up to try and bring a few fish back. So yeah, I mean, the rig I used, where are we? Used that one there. So they're a bit of a handmade one that I have specially done for me. One of the customers in the shop makes it for me. So they're a cane bristle. They're a bit of a copy of an old image float. I do like cane bristles because they fish the same every time.
Alex, that is ridiculously small. So
Yeah. 5 to 12.
was that any inside line?
No, this is fishing down over the inside line, and I can fish it across as well.
Right, I'm going to put my hand up there, like, sir. I wasn't listening properly. So
Yeah.
did you? You had to go to this to
Yeah,
get
to
the
keep-
last few fish
Yeah,
out.
yeah. So as the day goes on, you tend to reach for a lighter rig, especially when the fish are competing. Even sometimes when there's lots of fish in your peg, that lighter rig will select them better stamped fish. It really will.
Is it because they've got more finicky?
Definitely.
Right, and they're getting a bit hook shy, and they've seen the line, and
Well, I don't know if it's
Dunno.
that. I just think they just naturally feel a presence, if you know what I mean. On these drains, the fish are always going to back away from you. And when you've got an angler left and right,
Ooh.
most of the time, they go away from you.
just smacking the microphone there. Right, I'm just amazed. So, okay, so in my head, I'm thinking because the fish are going to be more confident feeders first thing,
Mm-hmm.
and there hasn't been that bankside disturbance of poles over their heads
Yeah.
and bait going in. You're going positive to start off the day, and then
Yeah.
you're going to have to go with more finesse.
Yeah,
Is that how you
Yeah.
set your stall out?
yeah,
But you might go real heavy with the chopped worm just to try and pull out some bonus fish.
yeah.
Because that bristle is probably a centimetre long.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, short bristles are set quick. You see your bites better.
Makes sense, but that is so. And what? Because you've got the double winder again with the
Yeah.
two floats on there. So, what size shot are they on there?
They are, I think they're 10s and 11s on there. And there's some 13 droppers, I think, as well.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Mm.
But them floats are one of my favourite ones that I always go to. I mean, if I was fishing March across, I use that particularly though. That
If
particular
it's really
pattern.
windy,
Yeah.
does that not affect?
Obviously, the windier it is, you tend to use more back shots.
Would you also decrease the line between your pole tip and the float?
It depends. Some days you need a longer line, another day you need a real shorter line.
Imagine you've got a facer and you can't...
Face wind is a nightmare.
Yeah.
I had it at March the other day and it really annoyed me. I drew my usual area just past the...
I'm going to get a
windmill.
violin.
And what you've got is you've got all houses, and then you've got like 4 pegs where there's an open park and a few willow trees, and the wind just comes across there, and it's freezing. I don't know why, it always seems to be freezing when I draw there, and it's really awkward. So you sort of have to think about the way you lay the rig in. That's another thing, you know, instead of just dropping your rig in, and
Yeah.
you've got to do everything away from you all the time.
Is that where you need a shorter line between the tip?
Yeah, you've got more control.
Yeah.
And then another day you might want a longer lash or a longer length of line.
Is that when you got wind behind?
No, probably when the wind's in your face or behind you, you probably use a shorter one,
Right,
so
okay.
it isn't going away from you all the time.
Yep.
Normally you use a longer line when the water's clear, so you don't have the pole tip over their heads.
Does that actually spook them a lot?
Massively. I mean,
Yeah.
the rage at the minute is to paint your top kits grey. I don't know whether that makes a big difference, but if you're confident that it makes a difference, then do it. Big believer in, if you're confident that it's working for you, then do it. I mean, a lot of the manufacturers now, they do like a ghost kit, which is this grey or heron grey kit. But my opinion is, whatever colour thing is, if the sun's, it'll always cast a shadow on the
Be a
water.
silhouette, won't it? Whatever.
Yes,
Yeah.
But a lot of people are using it, and they're, you know, the in thing, definitely.
So, okay, so if conditions allow, you've got a nice, not a very light wind.
Yeah.
What about fishing to hand?
Yeah, fishing to hand has its big advantages. Obviously, it's quicker.
Yeah.
But the presentation is totally different.
Yeah.
I would say 8 times out of 10, short lining, so breaking down, is more efficient. You hit more bites. You can choose a different rig depending.
Yeah.
You can select the right stamp of fish. I tend to use whips normally if I'm fishing right shallow, so if I'm fishing for rudd or bleak or in real shallow water, and bottom end only float, so little whip wagglers, and that's when I use Maxima as my main line, because it sinks. You flick your rig out, sink your line, it's all underneath the surface skim, and your rig fishes properly. There's loads of different rigs.
I was just thinking, if you've got fishing to hand, you've got more. You'll instantly have more line between the float and the pole tip.
Yeah.
You can get the pole away from the feeding fish.
Yeah.
If conditions allow, I mean, if you've got someone who's a bit skilled at this, they could probably in clear water.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's some fantastic whip speed anglers about, but like I was saying, because the short lining normally outscores it in the end because it's presentation.
Yeah.
Totally different. You know, if you've got a 5 metre whip and it's a little bit windy, or a surface skim, you've got line and it's pulling the float the wrong way, and you know it's going to be wrong. It's like when to fish a waggler. Some days it's literally impossible to fish a waggler.
I was about to mention the waggler, because I remember the good old days on the cut-off channel.
Yeah.
The top boys would always win with 40, 50 pound a roach, not the pole.
Yeah.
But waggler fishing, and they fish it 2/3 across.
Yeah.
The amount of anglers on the bank would push all the fish across.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't people did have poles, but it wasn't the in thing in match fishing in those days. But the really good waggler anglers, they were just. I'm trying to think of one guy from Whittlesea. He was a magician, and he would annihilate anybody who had any roach near him at all. You know, on the waggler, really good. But does the waggler get used much?
It does, more and more these days on the drains, especially Benwick. I know when Kai was on the show, we spoke about the Hot Rod Special Edition Waggler rod, and that is a specialist tool for around here. So normally you'd go, like if you were fishing the river, you'd have your standard 13, 14, 15 foot float rod, longer for control and stuff like that. Whereas on the drains, they're not very wide, so you don't need a stiff rod. You need a really soft tip, but you need it stiff enough so you can cast. So these rods, you can sort of use them as a whip almost. So it's like a whip with a reel on, and you're flicking it past where the pole is, and you just carry on catching fish. You don't necessarily feed much bait over there. You're not feeding it all the time, but you're just fishing past areas in your peg where the fish have naturally backed off to.
So you might, if you start on the pole, you've probably, you feel the fish have moved off the pole line, and you just then go a bit further where the pole can't reach. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I used to love fishing with a waggler. Brilliant. And that brings me on to this. There's two things I'm going to mention, because doing the contrast between what you're doing and what I do is, excuse the pun, poles apart. Yeah. But also, it's not. It's amazing. I'm going to talk about fish seeing line and things in a minute, but let me talk about waggler fishing and pike fishing while we still talk about this. There's one thing I need to mention to any budding people who are going to go pike fishing this winter. You've got to get your presentation right. Now, when we used to fish the waggler, you punch it out, you got the bulk shot around the waggler, and you would just feather the line before we hit the water. So you get all the shot on the line flying past the waggler, wouldn't you? It would solve tangles. So the pike anglers out there who tend to use floats, inline lead, and just your trace, that's what they do. They're casting out, they're feathering the line, and the dead bait flies out. The inline lead's following them, and the float causes resistance. The whole thing falls out nicely. So you guys who are ledgering, I just want you to think about that, because when you're casting, your lead will overtake your bait, and I've seen several people casting, and they get this windmill effect. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem is this. I'm worried about people not using up traces. So, again, going back to the lock I was fishing on Sunday, this guy had experienced loads of bite-offs with people that hadn't used up traces. So, Alex had his pole rigs out, and I had a couple of my pike rods. I'm just going to reach for one of them. We'll go for that one. And on every... I showed him 2 or 3 rigs that I used. So, this one, I've got a titanium up trace. So, I think it's really important that you guys start thinking about this when you're pike fishing. You might think you're some kind of expert, which is great, or a novice, but you've got to think about the poor pike when it takes your bait. If it swims into your main line, you are going to lose everything, and that pike is going to have a death sentence. So, Alex, I mean, look at your finesse.
Talking about poles apart.
I know, that's £60 titanium wire, but you can see how neatly I've done that there. There's crimps on there. It's got 2 crimps.
It's quite neat for you compared to some of them other rigs I've seen.
Yeah, it is very neat, yeah. But it's very important that people use up traces. That won't kink. That's sort of kink proof. Yeah. The only weakness you have is the loop, and if you make the loop too tight, you get stress in the steel. Something else I'm going to reach for. So, what a lot of people are going towards now is fluorocarbon. Now, I know you guys use fluorocarbon for your match.
Yeah, fluorocarbon's really the in thing at the minute.
Yeah, so you were talking about fish seeing rigs, weren't you?
Yeah, I don't think we use it for the visibility. I think that helps, obviously, but I think the main thing is the stiffness. Like you're saying, you want your lead, your bait to go away from your lead. That's why in feeder fishing now, fluorocarbon's really, really popular because it's stiff. It doesn't twist up. So when you're catching lots of fish, it's more efficient. You're not getting spin ups and stuff.
So you're using that for your hook links?
Yeah, hook links.
Now I've got £130 fluorocarbon here, and I'm actually using this as my up trace. Now, I suppose that's the crimp there, and the other crimp's down that far end somewhere. 4 foot?
Yeah, I'd say 4 foot. Yeah.
So I mean, the reason I've got it that short is because that's the length. It's just under half the length of obviously the rod in half, 11-foot rods. So the whole idea of this is that if I'm using this rig, this is my Fen leapfrogging rig. I've got a kind of like sunken float attachment, and I've got my £4, £130 fluorocarbon, and I've got inline lead, and then I'll attach my be a titanium, probably a titanium trace with a couple of trebles on. If for some, I'm casting like I cast a waggler, I'm chucking this out. My dead bait's going to be the heaviest part component. That's going to go first. That inline lead's 30 grams. Did you like why I use grams there? Yeah, just over an ounce, old school. Yeah. And then I've got a little float further up the rig above my up trace. The whole thing's going to shoot out in a straight line. If it starts to wobble in the air, I'll just feather the line anyway, so it lands all flat on the water like a waggler rig would do. Feather it down, same thing. So you're still using the same skills because it's a bit like you with your worm. Just I'm making sure this sinks properly. Yeah. So it all sinks. I'm not pulling it into any bottom debris.
Sinks on a tight line.
Exactly, the whole thing, yeah. So it doesn't matter if I'm chucking it just in front of me on a drain, or I'm walking down the drain, lobbing it out, and I'm trying to get some distance to hit the far margin. Again, with hitting margins, might fish the middle, but rarely. But you fish the features, don't you? Anyway, so I've got this all shooting out lovely in a straight line, and this is pretty similar boom. I've kept this straight on under tension. It would be a bit nice straight boom, but it's quite interesting using this fluorocarbon because I've actually, can you see it's pink?
Yeah, it's got a tinge to it, hasn't it?
It's supposed to be the colour that is the most invisible in water.
Really?
And this is the weirdest thing. For years, I've been using inline lead trace, up trace, just using a float, just to float on the surface. And I started getting drop runs, at least one a session last winter. And I never ever had to think like a carp angler because it's pike, and I'm thinking,
hungry, they just eat it.
Yeah, just eat it, yeah.
Go, yeah.
But I think the drains are getting more pressurised. There's less fish in them, and I think to get more efficient, like you guys are with all this, you have to make every pickup count. So I went back to the drawing board, and I just basically used a fluorocarbon uptrace, a long one, as long as I could get away with. This sunken float, it's not going to take the weight of the 30 gram lead, but it's probably going to take, I should say, a third of it. Now the point of the sunken float is that it's not. I think ledgering, if you ledger straight to the lead, the fish hit the braid. Yep. So you might have the same problems in match fishing.
Yep.
I think that if it's parallel, the line's parallel and it's tight, the fish gets spooked. I think if it's more vertical, it's more like weed.
Right.
They get less spooked. So my float rigs were working beautifully for 15 years, never had a problem. But last year I had these drop runs. I went to this type of setup, and it not only stopped the drop runs, I started getting more runs, and I'm thinking, this is weird. I didn't adopt this approach till back end of the season where I should have had more drop runs, but the reverse happened. So I'm thinking maybe we don't give the fish enough credit for their sense of feeling what's going on in the water with the lateral lines, or when they can actually see more than we give them credit for. They actually cuter more than we actually give them credit for. And you guys do. The way you set your rigs up, you are actually saying the fish are going to wise up doing the event.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think different aspects of the sport could learn loads from the match angler approach. Now, that's one example I can think of in kind of a clonky setup for pike fishing. Yeah. I mean, as a pike fishing goes, this is a very cute setup. But
cute.
Looking at the thickness of everything.
I thought it was sea fishing setup.
But it all has a purpose.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? And that's what I'm saying. So
the reason you use this fluorocarbon is it for how stiff it is?
Yeah. It's like another boom effect. And also, if a pike rolls on the trace, the braid will cut into the flanks of the fish.
Yeah.
If I use this, it's not going to cut into anything. No. And
it works a bit like leg core, but more fish friendly.
Far more fish friendly.
You can't see it.
If I'm lure fishing, we're going to go lure fishing, aren't we?
Yeah.
And you'll see I will use fluorocarbons for some of my traces, not all of them. Now, this is where it gets really, really, how can I put it, sensitive. UK anglers don't get it. I've done a lot of fishing in America now, and I've got a lot of contacts in Sweden, and they don't use steel traces.
No.
Two reasons. One is that if you bend steel, it gets a weak point. So even on the titanium setup, I was looking at this. If you look very carefully, even though you can see the wire starting to fray.
Yeah.
Yep, if you look really carefully.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen on fluorocarbon. And also, with the steel, repeated casting over a period of days of heavy lures, it will actually snap. It won't snap with the fluorocarbon. So
do you have lots of these tied up, ready to go?
Yeah.
If you get a bit like us as shock leaders and stuff for a feeder fishing, we have them already spooled up.
If I'm lure fishing, this will be at least a metre long.
Right.
And I'll show you because I'll use different. The strange thing is, the smaller the lure, the more chance I go to a metal trace, a wire trace, and I'll show you why when we do it. We'll probably go for boat. But if I'm using my big lures that I get sent through by Wolf Creek, I will use big fluorocarbon. And if I get the slightest tear's the wrong word, it'll be like a fracture.
Yeah.
You cut it off, and I retie the snap link.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll start with a metre, and if I had a really good day's pike fishing, I might end up with a 40 centimetre fluorocarbon trace left. I've continually cutting off and retying. So you never take any risks.
Right.
But it's absolute. If you fish in the right way, it's bulletproof. But I wouldn't recommend it for people that aren't observant.
Yeah.
And I think this is where you started off. You said something that it's fishing, and you do it your own way, and that's the great thing about it.
Yeah.
But this is what sets, not being big-headed, the better anglers off against average anglers, is that you use methods that are more efficient, but you have to be on the ball with them all the time. So I wouldn't recommend anybody lure fish with a fluorocarbon leader unless they were really on the game. Because if you don't notice that little kink in it, you could kill a fish if you lose a lure in it. But when you're really into things like you were with the worm and putting it across the bottom, I know if I've got the slightest kink in it, it cuts straight off, retie it, not a problem at all. So it's all about using the right material for the right form of fishing. So even though this looks a bit clunky, it actually works really, really well, and it is, if used properly, bulletproof.
So what pounds of braid is that?
That's on these reels is £60.
£60.
Because you know what? When we lure fishing, it'd be 80. My musky reels are £100.
Really?
Yeah.
So what advantage is it just for stiffness and setting the hooks and stuff like that?
Zero stretch virtually.
Yeah.
You can get braid that floats, braid that sinks, braid that just starts to float. Because I have the rods made up all the time. If it's mono, you've only got to nick it and you've got a weak point. Whereas the braid
or it kinks where it's been
twists,
bent over the same spot.
You get line twists and all sorts. But with the braid, it's so much more robust. Apart from if you get a pike's tooth against it, it'll just cut straight through it. Hence the need for an up brace. But yeah, when you wind down, if you say you lure fishing, you want to feel everything. So you yeah. I mean these the rods,
bite detection. Same reason why we use braid on feeder fishing is to see you bite.
When we go lure fishing, I'm going to give you you'll be amazed that the reels and the rods are really light.
Yeah.
And it's like the rods will be far lighter than you use for quiver tipping. Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing what you can feel. Yeah. And obviously when we step up a little bit, the rods are still really light and you can feel everything. You want to with the braid, you want to be able to feel. So with this £60 braid, we wouldn't use that for lure fishing. We'll be using £30 braid, maybe even £10 braid if we go drop shotting.
Yeah.
So we'll feel everything that's happening. This is for dead baits, so obviously you can step it up because you just want. It doesn't really matter. You just want to go overboard a little bit, so you've got that the safety valve built in. Yeah. On this one, this was the one I took to Menteith. This is heavier gear.
Now that looks like a sea rod.
Yeah, because if you get a big pike next to the boat, you don't give it any line.
Yeah.
So that is probably about £80 braid on there, and that's a £3.5 test curve rod. And these hooks here, they are owners. I think they're the 41, 42 series. I can't remember now. They will not bend. You don't want hooks that are going to bend because you've got anchor ropes down next to the boat. And you hit something. These fish, they don't fight out away from the boat. You get them to the boat, and they go under the boat, and you've got to make sure you get them straight back in. I've got one rod where the varnish has cracked on one of the eyes. A long, long time ago, in a very secret place, I had a 28, and it was in about 3 foot of water, and it just wanted to go under the boat, round the mudweight, and past the engine.
Right.
So just had to lock and just cross everything and pull it back, and luckily it came back, but the varnish on the eyes took the brunt of it. So
do the big fish fight really hard then, Andy, or are they more like a solid weight just pulling?
In the winter,
or a pike, each individual fish fight's different.
Yeah. So this boat rod, the one you said looks like a sea fishing setup.
Yeah.
That's heavy duty gear because they're going to fight near the boat.
Yeah.
You've got to get them away from the anchor ropes. You need a lot of backbone in the blank. These blanks they're Harrison blanks. They're lovely. They're very thin, but they've got a lot of power in them. Mm-hmm. This rod is one of my. I had these made for me. These 11-foot rods, and because I use them on the drains, it bends right through to the handle. If I get a good fish on, the rod will literally bend through to the handle because the braid doesn't give.
Yeah. If
it's too tippy, I'll just rip the hooks out of it. So even in the winter, you get a good fish on. I lost a clonker in March last year. I still dream about it now, or nightmares. It tail walked, This is on one of the drains. I had it on one of these rods, and when I hit it, the whole thing went round. And I'd walked up to the fish because I had to drop back. It's too long for me to explain now, but I wanted to get an angle on it. I wound down, and I was putting it back towards the other rods where my net was, and this thing came out of the water. So yeah, they, depending on the time of year, the water temperature, they will fight incredibly hard, or they come in sometimes. I remember I had a 25-pounder 2 years ago. I just wheeled it straight into the net. Didn't fight at all. I was quite happy it didn't fight. Just put it straight in the net and then admired it from there. But you saw the picture. I showed you a picture last week of a real good one I had recently. Yeah. That must have took me 15 minutes to get.
Really?
Yeah. But I did have it on lighter gear. I had it on 30-pound braid, a smaller lure, and it was an incredible fight. It was such a good fight that there was two boats near me, just stopped fishing, just looked. Could not get it up. It was great. Bit of heart palpitations, but
do you find like when you hook pike on the smaller, softer rods, do they fight differently to when you hook them on your beast rigs? Like obviously, what I mean is when we're fishing the pole and we hook a pike or whatever, they don't really do a lot in a sense that you just sort of hook and you think, oh, what's that then? Is it a tench? You think, oh, is it a tench? Is it a bream? Then you go, nah, it's a pike.
But what size are they?
They're probably 4 to 10, 15 pound.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought a double would give you a right old.
Well, they don't really. I don't know if they don't know their hook. That's what I'm trying to explain with this. With the softer rods and that. You hook into them and they're just slowly moving as if they're still trying to eat the fish and don't realise.
I think it's water temperature.
Yeah.
I had a mid double on a fly rod. I was fishing with the resis back end of August, and I got a thermometer gauge on my hummingbird, and it was about 16.5 degrees. Anything above 18 degrees, I wouldn't do it. It's too hot. And this fish, it took all my fly line off. It went halfway into my back end. I thought I hooked a big trout. It was incredible. And I've got 11 weight fly rod. I'm bending right round to this fish, thinking, what is going on? It's mid double.
Do you ever foul hook pike?
Not really, no. I just think it's water temperature. So at the minute, they're fighting really well because of the water temperature. I wonder if when you guys are catching, it's like January.
No, especially in the summer, they do go a bit more then. But I just don't. I think it's because of the elastic and the cushion. They're not. I don't know. It just doesn't feel right to them.
Well, when you're fly fishing, you can do the same thing. You can really pull down on these pike, and because the old fly lines used to stretch. So what you do is you pull the rod right round because you knew the fly line would give it a bit like the pole elastic.
Yeah.
And they'd go bloop and come right up to the top.
Yeah.
It would just take the whole thing out.
Yeah.
So I think the elastics actually letting them go, but then they in shallow drains they've got to go to the side.
Probably. It's like totally different elastic and braid. It's one spectrum to the other, isn't it? So maybe that's the answer, isn't it?
Hopefully, we can get you into a fairly decent pike on a light rod, and you could tell the difference. But
I've not really caught many pike. I mean, I've never really done, and I've always fancied going on a trip. I've had some zander out of the drains.
Well, what's your PB?
What, pike?
No, Z.
I would say just under £10.
You know exactly how big it is.
9.14, I think it was.
How did you catch it?
Double pinky.
Double pinky?
Yeah. Yeah. I spawned that one on, didn't I? I thought it was a bream, to be honest. Yeah.
Was it in the mouth or did you foul hook it?
No, it was in the mouth.
In the mouth?
Yeah.
Right, so I know this answer because I said this to Alex about a month ago. So we're going to go on the Zander stroke pike hunt. So hopefully we'll get you into something half decent on a bit lighter gear so you could tell the difference.
Yeah.
But I think the pole elastics, and I think also you have your gear balanced.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what you pick up within reason. It's balanced, isn't it? And you can get it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this gear, it's just there's no stretch in the braid. The rods take all the power of the fish. But these Scottish pike at the weekend they're impressive. It was brilliant. But it's the time of year, the water's still a bit warmer. But as it gets colder, pike don't fight much in the winter. But it's the best time to catch them because that's when they're at their healthiest state. You go fishing in the summer for them, they fight like stink, but they'll die because they literally fight themselves to death and wolf down the baits. I think what we'll do in a few weeks' time, I might tie a couple of traces up on video. We'll post those as well.
Yeah.
Right. Rig-wise, is there anything else that you want to cover?
Not really. I think with the video, I'll probably cover it a bit more, maybe.
Cool. Yeah. Did you want to touch on the match results?
Yeah, I think we might as well, won't we,
Yeah.
really? So we'll start with the match yesterday, which I won. Get that in again. Which was the third round of the East Midlands Winter League at Benwick. Obviously, we had the practice match last week, and there was some decent weights in the town. This week, the fish seemed to have spread out quite a bit, even up towards Apenny Toll and the other side of Apenny Toll. Last week there was sort of £2 and £3 was a decent weight up there. This week, £8-9, so totally different. We was expected to be a lot harder this week, and it's gone the opposite way round. I think as out of the 70 anglers, I think the average weight was just over £9, which is phenomenal. It is really good, especially for Benwick. Normally, Apenny Toll and that you are struggling for bites, so £2-3 a good weight, but there was sections, one with 15 and 16.
What do you think? Is it?
I don't know. I think maybe the
fish?
weather. I think obviously the fish are perhaps moving through, and we may have hit them as they're coming in. But there was a lot of pike and you don't normally see pike anywhere near those areas. Whether they're holding the fish up at the minute or not, or they're following the fish in, I don't know. But there definitely isn't as many fish in the town yet, but there's a lot more fish away from the town, which is good. So you've got more anglers able to win the match.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
which is good. So obviously it's a team match, and it was a close-ish match really. There was some good scores. Brown and Hot Rods won the day with 27 points. They didn't have a particularly brilliant draw. I think they fished well in areas and made the most of their pegs, so they have done well. Second was Stanjay Gold. Their first two rounds they've had a bit of a nightmare with the draw, and they come second yesterday with 32 points. Third was ourselves with 34. I think we're happy-ish with a third position because we're still winning the league with 7 points just, but we didn't. I think everyone could say they had good and bad pegs, so it's there or thereabouts with that one. Image were fourth with 38 points, Stanjay Silver on 47, Mark 1 Black on 49, and Mark 1 White on 51. I mean, Mark 1 White were level at the top with us before the match started, and I think they fell with a real poor draw. So that's a big disaster for them. But the league's so tight it could turn upside down.
What's the overall standings in the league at the minute?
So we're winning the league at the minute with 7 at the halfway stage. Second is Hot Rods, Brown the Hot Rods on 8. Matrix Image of 10. And then Mark 1 White and Stanjay, I think, are both on 11 points. So it is really, really close. Obviously, everyone's looking to get in the top 2 to try and qualify for the Winter League final, which, again, this year is on March, and the Drains, and then Decoy as well. That's like the big main Winter League final.
How many more matches have you got to go?
So we've got this Sunday will be the 4th round. So we've had sort of a double header at Benwick. Then we've got a practice match at March, which is the March Open as well. Following week is round 5, and then practice match on the drain. So we're going to be using sort of Factory Bank, 20 foot, maybe Benwick, any of the drains that are fishing the best, basically. So the last round they normally have a real good fish off. Everyone catch plenty of fish, and then obviously the week after that is the final match, round 6. So it's going to be a really, really tight league. It always is.
Yeah, I think it's good though. It keeps everyone's interest going.
Yeah, definitely. Individually wise, obviously, as I spoke and touched on earlier, managed to sneak the win with £17.8 from D4, which is sort of just off the boats at Little London for those that know it. Second was Bob Fitztench, Cheesy Bob, with £17.6. He's had 2 tench or 2 bream and his usual worm combination. So well done, Cheesy. Third was Gav Butler from the town, Peg 2, team angler, teammate of mine, with 16.6. And fourth was Paul Cowan from Apenny Toll with 15.11. So the weights aren't massive for what you see on the drains, but what you got to remember is there's 70 pegs all in a row that have all caught a few fish, which is good in my eyes.
All close. It's incredible.
Yes, really close.
Yeah.
Really, really close.
It's a very fair fishery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very fair.
Apart from where Cheesy Bob imports his tension.
Yeah, he brings him in his flask, I reckon. Yeah.
It's got a very strange shaped flask.
Yeah, but no, it is good to see the pike. Obviously, maybe as match hangers, we need to be looking for pike strikes and stuff like that to show us where the fish are.
Well, it's a bit rare. I mean, when you talked about this earlier, I thought it's normally a sign of lots of jacks, but you never know. But yeah, I'm not sure what to make of this. Maybe I had to go down with my sea fishing gear and as you call it, and see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so that was Benwick. I'll move on to the Ramsey club matches now. Obviously, if you are got a club match every week, it'd be nice to hear some results because we are going over the same sort of clubs. I know these clubs go every week, but it would be nice to hear for some different clubs. So the Wednesday Open match was at St Mary's. First was Stu Cheetham, who's been having some real good form on St Mary's. He had £17 won on the hemp seed. So like we said earlier on in a couple of podcasts, the fish hadn't come into St Mary's yet, but each week the weights...
Would that be roach?
Yes, yeah, mainly roach and a few rudd. So the roach are starting to get in there now, and they're starting to spread out as well. Then there was a 12-12, Malk Sampson, and then Keith, Don't Show Us Your Teeth, was third with £11 too. So pretty decent weights for the midweek match. Sunday was an open sweepstake, and Stu Cheetham won it again. So he won back-to-back matches there, so well done him. He had 21-13 roach on the seed again. Second was my dad, Mr. Bates, unbelievably, Mr. Whip. He had 21-6. He had sort of a lot of rudd and decent roach on casters.
You had the lead of the mic over that then. I'm sure I saw a Bates. I'm thinking it can't be.
Can't have been two places at once.
So he's had two good weekends.
He has, yeah. He's all confident. He was all doom and gloom 2 weeks ago, and now he's back making rigs. And it's amazing what a few fish can do to someone.
That's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it is good. And then third was Mount Plant with 16-14 again, whip fishing. So yeah, St Mary's is starting to fish really well. I know that they've been catching at the Ramsey Narrows as well. There's quite a lot of fish there. There's a few tench feeding, a few big perch. So yeah, the Ramsey waters have been pretty tidy. Obviously, we told what Benwick is Ramsey water as well, so it doesn't really get fished much, but it's good to see a few fish coming out there. Glassmore or Carrot Wash at Ponders Bridge near the houses there. The Whittlesey Saturday lads had a match. Paul Wright won it with £11.4, lots of really small fish. Second was Mel Saggers with 10.4, and third was Andy Linton with 7.7. So not massive weights, but it's not really one of them venues that's associated with big weights. So that's the Glassmore Bank. I mean, you don't really hear a lot about Glassmore anymore, do you?
It's very shallow, isn't it?
I thought it was always quite... Well, it's sort of in between the 20-foot and March.
Sorry, I'm getting mixed up with Cotbank.
Yeah,
Cotbank's really shallow, isn't it?
Yeah. Glassmore's sort of basically the 20-foot further down, isn't it? Yeah. So another venue we don't really touch on. There's miles and miles of that no one really seems to fish.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of water to go at. What about, have we had anything from Tidgate this week?
I haven't seen TID results this week. I've been on Facebook looking, but I haven't seen anything. So that's it really on the match results side of things. So pleasure angler wise, Andy Shortland from Diary of Fen Angler has been in contact again. I think 5 of them had a bit of a knock up on Sunday, and £52 a roach won their match between them. I'm not sure how long they fished or anything like that, but £52 a roach is a pretty impressive bag, isn't it? Beautiful.
Yeah, that you guys have got to organise a match.
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be one, maybe 2 over Christmas on the Welland and the Glen, but I'm doing a feature for Angling Times in a couple of weeks, and we're going to go on the town Welland.
You're going to fish down there, are you?
Yeah, we're going to do a bit of bread and emp fishing. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Are you going to video it or just have stills?
I think that's just stills. Yeah. Perhaps we had to talk about it a bit in the podcast.
Yeah, definitely. That would be cool.
Time.
Yeah, and any other clubs out there, you must, get in touch with us, and we'll publicise things as best we can, because we can only tell people what's going on when we know. So it's the same old clubs, but of course they get in touch with Alex and they let him know what's going on. Yeah. So you publicise those, don't you?
Yeah.
What about yourself this weekend, Alex? So you got the Sunday.
Yeah, so Sunday we've got obviously round 4. So all week I'll be tying more hook lengths and adjusting a few rigs and bits and bobs that we learnt as a team from this week just gone. And then I might go Wednesday, might have a little practice, try and get ahead of the game, go march and do a bit of homework on there, see what that's fishing at the minute. You never can go too much fishing. You never, you know, especially match fishing. Get 2 or 3 of you together, and the information, when 3 of you or 4 or 5 of you go, the information you learn is immense, really.
Well, I disagree. I think even when I go predator fishing, if you go on big waters, it day to day it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
It just changes. These things got fins. They don't stay still, do they?
no.
No, but you can never go enough, and you always, if you've got an inquisitive mind, you're always learning, aren't you? That's the good thing about it. Do you think you work in the shop on Saturday?
Yes, yeah.
So you arrive Sunday, just hoping that everything's in place.
Yeah.
Do you get guys that are part of the team that go on the Saturday as well?
A lot of the anglers will go Saturday and Sunday. Yeah. Some of them will fish commercial matches on a Saturday, so they do a bit of both. But Saturdays is normally the busiest day of the week for me in the shop.
Yeah.
You get a lot of your match lads coming in for bait. So yeah, you have to be there on a Saturday.
Well, you need the old Wonga coming in to make the world go round, don't you?
Yeah.
Right, okay, so I think that's pretty comprehensive tonight. We've covered loads of rigs that you may use, your approach to how you would actually attack a match. We've touched on my clonky, which is not clonky, pike fishing outfits. And I've laid down a challenge to you for next June.
Yeah.
The swing tip versus the pole.
Yeah.
I shall tie my hook links up on the bank, and my sweet corn dendrobina approach will...
On the cocktail, eh?
yeah, do it. Anything else you want to add this week, Alex?
No, not really, mate. Like I say, we're going to do a video, just briefly run through a few of my rigs that I use and floats and stuff. So yeah, that's about it really, mate.
Cool. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure as normal. So to all the listeners out there, something slightly different this week. We just thought we'd talk about our different approaches. Keep the comments coming in, so we'll try and do things that you would like us to do. We're going to try and make things a bit more interactive with the videos, so you can see what approaches Alex would take on the bank when he fishes his opens. But hope you've enjoyed it. Keep the comments flying in. Keep sharing the videos and the pictures. We'd really appreciate it. And just keep sharing the word. So the more listeners we get, the more feedback we get, the more ideas of what we can do. I suppose that brings it to me just to wrap this up and say, this has been Tales from the Tackle Shop, a Fenland Fishing TV production.